So thank you so much, everybody, and welcome to our funny February event with authors Daniel Peak, Robin Bennett, and Jennifer Killick. We're very excited that you're here. So without further ado, can you introduce yourselves in a 10-second elevator pitch for me, please? Who are we going to start with? Ladies first, maybe. Jennifer. Yes, yes, there you go. Karen. If you say no, that's it. You're getting it.
Okay, so I'm Jennifer Killick. I've written, I think I've got 6 books out so far. The Alex Sparrow series, there's 3 of those, Mo Latina Junkers, and my 2 newest books, which are Crater Lake and Crater Lake Evolution. Yeah, that's pretty much all the exciting info about me that you need to know. Someone else's turn.
I think that's definitely 10 seconds. You're in the clear. Robin.
Yeah, sure. I'm Robin Bennett, author of Monster Max and the stupendous sports series, amongst other things. When I'm not writing books, I've fallen into the habit of starting companies. And in fact, starting companies and writing books are sort of amazingly similar pastimes. So making up companies and making up books, same thing.
Each to their own, isn't it? And Danny, hi.
Hello. My name's Daniel Peak, and I mostly write TV scripts for adults and kids, comedy. I've only written 1 book, so out of this kind of trio, I'm definitely the lightweight, and I'm sure I will learn more than I contribute. But yeah, I generally write comedy TV for children and adults, and I've written this book called Little Horror from Firefly.
Yay, excellent. Also, I know that you kind of know each other's books, so I've kind of given them all the task of pitching one of the other authors' books. So I just thought, it's too easy to do your own. So shall we go in the same kind of direction, or?
No, that's fine. I'm ready.
Jennifer's like, I'm ready. I'm so ready.
Okay, so do I have more than 10 seconds though?
You have a little bit more, yeah.
Okay,
we'll be lenient in this game.
All right. So this is Little Horror by brilliant Daniel Peak. I absolutely love this book. Flew through it. It's a proper joy to read. It's about an almost 2-year-old called Rita, who is exceptionally, strangely smart. She can talk. She's much cleverer than her older brother, Lewis. And we find out exactly why she's clever, and she goes on this amazing adventure, and it is full of just brilliantly funny moments. There's lots of my favorite words in there, like poo, fart, knickers, I think, pants, and ghoulies, which I was delighted to find towards the end. Ghoulies, you don't hear that very often these days. There are ghoulies in this book. There's a really, really evil, bad, creepy, horrible man as well. And honestly, if you want a laugh, give it a read, because it is amazing. So highly recommend it.
Thank you.
Daniel, you've got loads to live up to.
Certainly have, haven't I? So Monster, I don't have a copy of Monster Max. I've fallen at the first hurdle because I don't have a copy of it to pick up. But it's also an extremely funny book by Robin Bennett, series of books, actually. There are 2 of them, about a young boy called Max who transforms into a monster whenever he burps. So he's a bit like the Incredible Hulk, except it's not when he gets angry, it's when he gets windy. He turns into a monster and disrupts everything around him. It's full of sort of chaos. It's also got its fair share of exploding toilets and disgustingness, but also a really lovely story about friendship and about family as well. And in the Marmalade Ghost, which is the most recent of the 2, Max has to save the users of a daycare centre from a haunted jar of marmalade, which has been kind of sent there by his mother's ex-boyfriend, who is an East European werewolf. So quite cliched, really. I mean, we've all read stories like that before. But yeah, lots of fun, and a very, very quick and very funny read.
There we go. Robin.
Sounded like a Mexican soap opera set in translation.
Well, you wrote it.
Brilliant. This is one of the Crater Lake books, which are also brilliant. I had the honour of reading them very early days, and it was one of those, you just know this is going to be massive moments. Really, without a shadow of a doubt, I'd have put the farm on it. It's sort of like Stranger Things, without the sort of weird and unfathomable plot twists, and also without an angry Winona Ryder, which is definitely a massive plus. I think more than anything, I like the dialogue. The funny dialogue, or just generally the dialogue. It's one of those books that sort of made me wish I had friends like that at school. And I loved it for that. I really did. It's totally real. Just trips off the tongue. Great read. And I wish there were more.
Don't we all?
Who knows?
You are definitely not alone in that.
Yes.
I get emails all the time.
Thank you so much, Robin. That was lovely.
All right. So all three of you write funny books, right? But you all write very different types of humor. Is there a reason you were drawn to humor? And especially like the kind of humor you write, because like we've got madcap adventures, we've got a bit of slapstick, we've got some like darker, more like horror humor. Like, is there a reason? Is there a tell us your secret, basically?
So, well, for me, I think you kind of go with what comes out, if that makes sense. I've not really planned anything that I've written to be a certain way. It's all just kind of happened by accident. I've had an idea for a story, I've started writing it, and then what has come out. And obviously before the Crater Lake books, I did that Alex Sparrow, which were more kind of like properly comedy based and with some slapstick and silliness in it, which I loved writing, but I wanted to try writing something a bit darker. When I started writing Crater Lake, I intended it to just be kind of a pure kind of horror, quite chilling thing. But then the kind of jokes just kind of snuck in through the dialogue, through the characters, just because they did, even though I kind of fought against them for a bit. And then I thought, you know what, like this obviously wants to be in here, so we'll go with it. So yeah, it was an accident. And then I just loved writing Crater Lake so much. It's so fun making people laugh, and it's so fun making people scared as well. So combining the two is lovely.
All right. Daniel?
I would echo what Jennifer said, that it's not, I don't think you really choose necessarily what kind of humor to do. It's just what's funny to you. The reason that I like to write funny stuff in particular, certainly in terms of books, is I think it's the way you can get the most direct sort of immediate engagement with a reader. You know, if you write something that's supposed to be that you think is like profound or evocative or deep or something, it's hard to know whether it succeeded or not. But if you write something that's meant to make someone laugh, then there's no escaping really whether it's worked or not. You know, you can tell straight away whether it's failed or whether it's succeeded. And if it does succeed, you've released endorphins in someone else's brain, which is amazing. It's like a magical thing to do, really. So I guess that's probably why I'm drawn to it. And in terms of the particular style or flavor of it that I've done, I suppose, it's just what comes out, isn't it?
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's true. No, it does tend to happen. I mean, I think funny is really important. I think funny is really serious business. It's quite empowering for children, because if they can laugh at things, they're not scared of them. And I also think that, I tend to sort of pick funny books at the airport, mainly because they're probably the last thing I'll read. I'm flying tomorrow, so that's going to be interesting. But like the sort of, you're saying the sort of, you don't set out. I've never set out to sort of say, oh, I'm going to write a funny book about space, or I'm going to write a funny book about monsters. I think if the premise is funny, it's just going to be amusing. And I do like the tightrope feel, because if you mess up, you mess up. It keeps you on your toes as a writer.
Are there any funny writers that have like influenced you or that you admire? Anybody you wish you could be, or books you wish you'd written?
I think there are loads of brilliant funny writers at the moment. Obviously, you've got Maz Evans, who is probably the OG queen of funny writing, and is still, she brings out so many books as well. I think Sam Copeland, Jenny Pearson are both writing amazing funny books as well. Oh, I absolutely love, these are my favorites, Honor and Perdita Cargill, who wrote Waiting for Callback and the Diary of Accident Witch. I love their writing so much. Just they get that voice so bang on. They're just brilliant. So those are probably my favorite funny writers.
Yeah.
What about you, gentlemen?
I was thinking about the stuff that used to make me laugh when I was a kid, and that I kind of refer back to that, and that probably was Spike Milligan poems. I mean, he wasn't a novelist, but there was that book, Silly Verse for Kids, that was around when I was a kid, which is really just very silly, sort of anarchic, quite chaotic poems that don't mean very much, but that I notice 40 years later are still in my head. And another one that I really liked, I kind of hesitate to mention this because he's the epitome of a celebrity author, but John Lennon's A Spaniard in the Works by John Lennon was this book that we had on the shelf when I was a kid, which again is just nonsense stories and poems that would never have been published if he wasn't a celebrity, it has to be said. But they did make me laugh an awful lot. My brother and I used to kind of challenge each other to read them aloud without laughing, and always failed. So, I mean, yeah, it's interesting that he was famous for something else before he wrote them. But when I was a kid, and probably now as well, I do like sort of nonsense. Yeah. The book that I've written is quite structured and not like that at all. But as a kid, and I think kids now often just quite enjoy something that's very chaotic and anarchic.
Yeah, it's interesting. No one's really writing nonsense at the moment, are they? No one's doing that. Perhaps they should.
Perhaps they should. I was talking to my nephew the other day, who's 10, and he'd found a recipe on the internet and fed it through Google Translate to about 6 different languages and then back out. And what came out the other end was a nonsense poem. It was very funny. It was really, really funny. So
yeah, no, and I think there really is room for nonsense rhyme and nonsense, because we used to, same as you, we used to learn the Spike Milligan rhymes because it's the sound of them is funny.
Yeah.
And yeah, and they're just slightly ridiculous, and that's what kids have a great sense of the ridiculous, I think, more than a structured sort of joke. But you know, I think there are loads of writers out there that are funny without actually cracking jokes. I mean, I think that I remember reading a book by Peter Ustinov, and I know he's sort of known as Hercule Poirot mainly, and a sort of raconteur, but he's written a couple of books, or maybe he's written a couple more, but he's written a couple of books that you can read as a sort of a teen right up to adult, and they're brilliant without cracking jokes. They're just funny because he's just a funny person, and that counts for a lot. Yeah.
Actually, talking about, go ahead.
No, I was just about to add. I was just, obviously, I admire greatly Jennifer Killick and Daniel Peek.
Ditto, Robin. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just trying not to like fawn over any of the 3 of you, but whatever. You mentioned jokes. Are there any jokes that you were planning to put in your books that didn't end up working or were cut out of your books? Anything that you would like to share with us so it gets its moment in the sun after all?
I think most of mine stayed in. I'm quite strict when I first draft. I'm quite brutal, and I tend to cut everything out myself. If it doesn't need to be in there, it goes. The only things that got taken out of Crater Lake after I submitted the draft were like the bloody things. I had to take out some of the gore, which I totally understand, especially because with Crater Lake, we were really kind of doing something new and try and seeing, you know, how we didn't know how people were going to react to it. So I had to take out a bit of blood, but I don't remember losing any jokes. I don't know what about you, Daniel? Any cut jokes? Oh, sorry, that's my dog. Sorry.
We like pets, so good.
No, not really, not that I can think of, because as I say, I think sometimes jokes are like the last thing that goes in. You start with your story, obviously, and where your characters take you and so on. And I find that when you're writing a story, if you have to swerve to hit a joke, it's probably not really worth it. You're probably best to just leave it where it was. And so no, Karen is the answer to that. Or if there were, I can't remember. I'm sorry.
I mean, I agree. I think that you know, one of my sort of rules, and I'm just going to give away one of my rules now, but one of my rules is definitely don't let a joke get in the way of a story, or the story, or the character. I mean, it's because as soon as a joke can really break the narrative, and it can just stop it dead. And also, I guess if a joke doesn't fit, I mean, I wrote this book, Space Dragons, a few years ago, and it's got dragons in space. So that was the premise. You very kindly gave me a quote.
Loved it.
And yeah, there was a joke in that I really, really wanted to put in, but it just didn't fit with any of the characters. I couldn't imagine any of the characters actually saying it. Can I say it now? Because then it'll never see the light of day.
Now is the time, Robin. We are here. You're captured that audience.
Right. So it's a borrowed joke as well. So you should never really borrow jokes. But the joke is, if you're an astronaut and you don't end every relationship with "I need space," then basically you're wasting everyone's time. And I really wanted to put that in Space Dragons, but I couldn't see that. None of my characters would actually say that. So I've said it here now.
Well, there you are. Yeah. Thank you for providing this joke for us tonight. I'm very, very, very happy that,
sense of release I'm feeling.
Is that like something that you've been holding on to for a while?
No, it's cathartic, actually.
Don't burp. Be careful. Which of your characters do you relate to the most? Do you put bits of yourself into the characters, or is there a character that you wish you could be more like?
So with me, I think there's bits of myself probably in all of my characters to some extent. Definitely little things from my life make it into my characters' lives. So, for example, in Crater Lake, in the Confessions chapter, where all the characters are telling their secrets from their stuff from the past, and Adrienne tells her story about how she kind of got tricked into going on a date with Trent, who is in her class, and it was really
my favourite character.
And then they had to sit at a little table in a restaurant with a candle and a rose, and she had no idea that this was going to happen, and it was absolutely mortifying. That happened to me in real life, and it was horrendous. I thought it was a swimming party with everyone from school, and obviously in those days didn't have mobiles, so no one kind of contacted each other and said, "Oh, are you going to the party?" No, there was none of that. It was in the holidays. They phoned my mum, and mum said, "Oh, swimming birthday party." I thought, okay, that's good. Went to the swimming pool, and it was just this one boy whose birthday it was, all of his family, aunties, uncles, cousins, like everybody and me. And I just kept thinking, oh, people will come. People didn't come. And then we finished swimming, and I thought, oh my God, I just want to leave. And then there was the dinner, and all of his family was sitting around a big, big, big table. And they had a separate table just to the side with a candle and a rose for me and him.
The worst of being in public as well, isn't it?
Honestly, I wanted to die, and they were all like, "Oh, look, you're so cute, hold hands," and trying to take photos, and I just said, "No, I can't sit here." So yeah, stuff like that goes in. So that was cool. I had that happen to her. But I think in Crater Lake, all of my main characters I genuinely have like such fondness for. I'm probably the most like Kat out of Crater Lake, I would say, because she's kind of more gentle, and she is always worrying whether everyone else is okay, and she wants people to be happy, and I think that's kind of my default mode. But yeah, no, I really do genuinely. I even love Trent. I love writing him because I just think, what is the worst thing someone could say in a situation? And Trent says it, and it's just super fun. So yeah, I love them all, but I'm probably most like Kat, I would say.
What about you, Danny?
I identify with Trent from Crater Lake. If there's a character, I like those kind of characters who have a very high opinion of themselves. I think are quite funny. The favourite character in my book is Rita, who's the star of the book, who's a little girl, has this guy who helps her for a period of time, who's a babysitter He's called James, and he's a teenager, and he kind of thinks that he's the hero of the story. He thinks he's a tough guy and stuff, but he's actually a coward, and he's a bit of a conspiracy theorist, and he's nowhere near as clever as he thinks he is. And so A, I can relate to that a little bit, and B, what I think he has, and what a lot of my favorite comedy characters have, is there's that gap between the opinion that you have of yourself and what the rest of the world can see. And I always find that quite funny, and that's quite a recurring thing, isn't it, in a lot of sort of comic fiction.
Yeah.
So he's mine, James the babysitter.
Yeah. I guess for me, I suppose it's Max more than anything else. I mean, Max is me in 1977 in suburban Reading, except I wished I was him, because I was sort of walking very quiet streets, doing not very much, sort of, I suppose, desperately wishing that something extraordinary would happen to take me out of this but it's, there's a lit of you goes into everything, but I probably most identify with the full back in the rugby, rampaging rugby, stupendous book, because so all eyes are on you for about 30 seconds every 80 minutes, and I can absolutely guarantee that I'll do something stupid. So yeah, the full back in rampaging rugby, that's me.
There we go. Before we go to the Q&A, so please make sure that you put your questions in the chat or underneath our live stream. What are your top 3 writing tips? Just give us 3. I mean, we've already gotten a couple from the conversation itself.
Okay.
But just if you could give us like 3 writing tips.
Okay, so my first one is, if you're writing for children, spend time with children. Don't imagine what they might be like. Don't hearken back to what you were like as a child. It's a different world. Just, be around children, listen to them, talk to them. And that helps, honestly, my writing more than anything else I do. My second thing would be, it's different. Obviously, this is different for everyone, but when I'm first writing a first draft, I just write from the start and I don't look back. Just go fast, get it done. Otherwise, I just think you can spend so long going back and tinkering. But once you've got that first draft done, obviously, then you can go back. So first draft, go fast, go hard, don't look back. And finally, I think let the characters lead the way as well, because I plan my stories, but I always leave room for things to change, because as you're writing, you get to know your characters. Things come up and the characters want to take you off in a different direction, and sometimes that direction is better than the one that you had planned originally. So I plan, but leave room for the characters to kind of change things as we go along as well. That's 3. I'm done.
Brilliant.
I love that. It was like
yeah. I forgot you were asking us that, Karen, and I was suddenly like, oh my god, I don't know how to write.
We have not briefed this at all ahead of time or anything. It's all off the cuff.
Yeah, sorry, totally improvised.
Robin,
can I just say everything Jen said is true? I mean,
is that your tip? Listen to Jennifer Killick. It works for me.
Oh yeah, that's the cheat tip. Yes, listen to Jennifer. I mean, one of my biggest tips for writing is just write. Write. It's practice makes perfect. And that's, I didn't get anywhere close to writing anything good until I really gave myself time to write every day. And the other thing is, once you've written, do listen to people. Again, when I started out, I was sort of writing. I made exactly the same sort of mistake that you mentioned. Is I was probably thinking back to my childhood without. Well, I suppose we had babies at the time, so I couldn't really ask them. But
unless they're Rita, because then they talk back.
Yes, actually, and then that would have been a very convenient thing to have. But no, once you've got it down, then do listen to people. Listen to anyone. But then, and the third one's going to be really annoying. Don't listen too much. You have to be visceral. You have to go with your gut, and you have to know where that line is, and you'll get there. The more experience as a writer you get, the more the more you will feel when you actually you have to go it alone, or when you have to pull back and listen to what your editor says, your mum, your children. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, Daniel. What about you? Because you come from slightly a different background, so has that informed it? Does that mean your tips are slightly different?
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, as I said, I've only written one book that's tried to be funny, so I don't know how much wisdom I've got, but I'll give you some anyway. I think so. The first thing that I would say is which sounds very obvious, write what you think is funny, which is to say, don't write what you think kids will think is funny. I think it's you can fall for the mistake of thinking, well, I'm not very interested in this idea, or it doesn't particularly tickle me, but I think kids will like it, so I'll put that in. And I think that's almost bound to fail, really. So everything that I've done in kids TV or in my book as well has always been stuff that makes me laugh and I genuinely like. And if a reader may or may not agree with me about that, but at least if I'm wrong about it, I'm sort of authentically wrong. So I think avoid that cynical thing of going, oh, kids will like this. So the second one, I think, is really useful to have quite a strong perspective on your story, be that a narrative voice. I think it's quite interesting that a lot of the funniest books are narrated first person, whether that's A Crater Lake, for example, or like Diaries of Adrian Mole, or Diary of a Nobody, or Jeeves and Wooster books are all narrated by Bertie Wooster, aren't they? And that's like a shortcut, I think, to putting on a funny voice, if you like, and also highlighting that gap that I mentioned before between what a person's view of themselves are and what's really going on around them. It allows you to kind of do that unreliable narrative thing, which I think is pretty funny. So there's write what you think is funny, the perspective, and I think another thing that generally makes things funnier is when you raise the stakes. So whatever situation a person is in, if you can just make things more difficult for them, more stressful, if you kind of just increase the surface tension of the story, then it's easier to bounce jokes off it. Because although probably the three of us do write different styles and slightly different types of books, in all three of them, the characters are in terrible peril of one kind or another. And I think in most funny stories, there is a lot at stake, whether that's that the character really wants something or that they're really threatened by something. And the more trouble that they're in, I tend to think the more fun and funny the story will be.
All right.
Yeah, go on, they're my three.
Yay. Oh, I think that's really interesting because I feel like you all like touch on different parts of the writing experience and like the process. Before we go to the Q&As, we're going to do a quick fire round. And just because it wouldn't be quick fire if I told you ahead of time, would it? They're quite simple, don't worry. What I'm going to do is put your left hand up for one and put your right hand up for the other so that we know. Left tea, right coffee.
Oh, I'm really bad with left and right.
Yeah.
Is that left? Left.
Just say tea or coffee.
Tea.
Tea.
Dan's got it right. That's
That's the front though, right?
Yeah.
How did you manage that?
I think it's the right way around where I live. Are we on the other side of the equator or something?
Yeah. It's like the water going around the wrong way in the loo. Yeah.
Sorry, you lost me for a sec. So tea or so we've got 2 teas and a coffee, right?
I'll have a coffee, please.
Tea for me.
Okay. Paper or computer?
Computer.
Well, for different things, but for the writing it all out, computer, obviously, because no one wants that arm ache. Surely.
People do.
I know, but oh no.
But I always plan on paper. I don't know about you.
I plan on paper. I draw maps and things, but when I write the draft, computer.
Yeah. Long book or short book?
Short.
Oh, everyone says short. I'm going to go say long.
Why?
I said short. I don't know.
Just want to be contrary now. Come on.
It depends. Just really depends, I guess.
Yeah.
But,
cake or ice cream?
Cake.
100%.
Cake. Yeah.
Okay. Paperback or hardback?
Paperback.
Hardback. I love them.
Do you stroke the spines and
and then I remove the dust cover and I stroke the underneath and then I love them. They're so beautiful.
And then do you get asked to leave the shop?
That's only when I start sniffing.
Yes.
You've had to like train myself out of that. It's difficult. Hero or the villain?
Villain.
Hero. I love the good guys.
And finally, writing or reading?
Reading, please.
Writing for me at the moment. I think it changes though in phases. At the moment, I'm loving writing. So I'll go for that. But sometimes I hate it, and then I prefer reading.
Yeah, I'm definitely.
That's why I've got both.
Yeah.
Writing at the moment.
Phases. Yeah, I'm definitely reading more than I'm writing. In terms of number of hours in the day. But yeah, then you'll be onto something, and then you just don't read at all I find when I'm really writing at loggerheads, then I stop reading.
Yeah, I'm not reading very much at the moment. I'm a bit behind. I am reading, but much less than usual because I'm in the middle of a first draft. So
there you go. Yeah.
Cool. Fantastic. All right, we're going to start with some questions. And what I'll do is I've got some Facebook chat questions here. So I'm just thinking we'll do those first and then I'll go into the chat. So we had a question from Ramona Caro. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Hi, Jennifer. I'm a fellow Golden Egg Academy student here. So big wave. How did you create a balance between the humor and the horror? And do you have any tips for balance?
I think obviously with writing a horror book, that kind of came first. So when I'm planning the plot, when I'm deciding where the story's going to go next, I don't think of making it funny. I think of action. I think of moving the plot forward. I think of the horror. And then the humor only comes in at certain moments, usually through characters, through dialogue. But I just think you need to keep in mind that any humor is going to diffuse the tension. So you need to choose your moment well. So, I mean, sometimes I'll put something in and then I'll think, oh, that's too soon. And I'll put it back even just a couple of pages later and it works much better. But there are points, I think, when you're writing where you're getting so into it and you're so tense and you're like, oh, and then you think, you know what, probably the reader also needs a breath now. And that's when to put it in. So just kind of feel your way through it, but don't be scared to move things around. And just bear in mind that whenever you do put a joke in, it's going to break that tension. It's going to diffuse it. So that can be a good thing or a bad thing. So just be careful where you put it.
And then we also have from Penny, our lovely publisher from Firefly Press. Hi, you all three. I'm loving this. Thank you so much. Another quick question for Jennifer. Are we supposed to laugh or scream at chapter 3, the one with the mum in the ceiling? Chapter 13.
13. Oh, do you know, out of
we get that asked a lot. Like, there's a lot of people go like chapter 13.
That chapter 13, I think out of all of the scenes that I've written, that's probably the one that freaked me out the most in my head when I was kind of, because normally when I'm first drafting, I just lie awake at night playing it all out in my head. I don't sleep much when I'm first drafted. It's very sad. And with that one, I was just like lying there, just imagining my own mother crawling upside down across the ceiling. So I think that's definitely, for me, that was just horrible. There's nothing wrong with my mum. She's really nice, but I never ever want to see that ever. So I would say definitely screaming rather than laughing, because that would not be funny. Like, imagine your own mothers, their hair hanging down, tickling your face. No, it's that.
No. All right, we're in the chat here. Lisa Allen asks, any tips for using comedy but with a serious subject matter? I feel like all of you do handle a mixture of like funny and like slightly more serious themes as well.
Yeah, never make a joke of the actual issue. You've got to make a joke around the issue. You've got to be funny around it. So they've got to be funny to make they have to, if it's the character speaking, the character then has to be funny to show that they're being brave, or to show that they're not defeated by this or whatever. But actually never ever make a joke about death. You know, it's not ha ha ha, they're dead, or or anything like that. That's what I think.
Any other tips?
I wonder if just that sometimes the more serious the topic is, or the more serious the situation, almost the more relieved you are, I suppose, when a joke comes along, and the more it stands out. And so genuinely, I find things funnier, I think, when they are about something serious.
And it's also when you're not supposed to laugh that
helps,
the urge to laugh becomes quite, like, sometimes if something funny happens but you're supposed to be serious, it's like, should not be laughing right now, but I can't stop myself. That's always like just me. It might just be
no. When my
it's
wife
probably just me.
When my wife was giving birth to our second,
you didn't.
I couldn't help it. We just had the worst midwife in the world, because Helen was at the bit right at the end, and the midwife looked over to me and she went, "I love France. I like the bicycling." She didn't care.
Oh my gosh!
I don't care about this person on the bed. That's the funniest thing in the world. So yeah, maybe she was using humour to diffuse.
Let's hope that's what she was doing. Richard Barton asks, are there any limits to be aware of when writing comedy for children? I think it'll depend on your age range as well, because Monster Max series is kind of geared towards slightly younger readers as well. But yeah, do you have any tips or any kind of, have you found any limitations?
I think there's always don't swear, which I always want to do. And because I know the children in my stories at the age they are, they would be swearing their heads off at absolutely everything. So the natural thing is to start putting in these really rude, sweary jokes. But obviously you can't do that. So yeah, no swearing, nothing. I that actually, when you asked the question earlier about taking out jokes, often when I'm writing, I take out jokes that are a little bit too, that I know the kids would get, but I know that librarians and parents and teachers probably wouldn't appreciate. So they, it's, I think you just feel the way, but there is a massive difference between what you can put in like an upper middle grade to a lower middle grade. So for me, I just have to, normally when I'm reading it back, I just think, oh, do you know what, that's a bit dodgy. Anything that goes towards anything kind of like, oh no, I feel really embarrassed saying these things now, like sexy stuff, or like not like, I'm not talking about like,
when you get embarrassed, that's when you know to go back.
So you heard it here first. No sex in children's
like
books.
or anything that even alludes to it, I'm really, really careful of, and drugs and things like that. I was really impressed actually in Little Horror that I thought you got away with a couple of little things in there that I wasn't allowed to put in my Alex Sparrow story, so I was a little bit jealous.
Really?
Yes, but I loved it. I especially loved where you said the mum right at the beginning, this is how you caught me with your book, that Rita knows that her mum puts her finger in the poo in the dirty nappy and sticks it on her tongue, and that I just thought was brilliant. Just brilliant. That was my funniest moment in it. But yeah, there's a couple of things in there that so I think maybe it's getting a little bit more lenient.
Do you think so? Yeah, I mean, that was only last September that came out. Do you think things have moved a bit?
Yeah, and Alex Sparrow was 2017, so maybe even over those few years, there's a few things that are more acceptable now than they were a little while ago. Not a massive thing. There wasn't anything. Don't worry, people. There's nothing horrendous in it, but just like a couple of words and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm going to let someone else talk now because I'm just bobbing on.
No, that's interesting, because I think that I would have said, that the only kind of boundary to watch is language, really, and where you avoid subject matter is most often just because kids aren't interested in. That's true. You might think, well, I won't include that bit because children probably aren't that interested in mortgage repayments or whatever. I'll talk about something else instead. But that's not because it's it's crossing any line. It's just not something that they'd be very interested. In
Monster Max and the mortgage repayment. It doesn't
have the same ring, does it?
Yeah.
No. So we have another question. What type of humor do you think kids react best to in middle grade? Is it dark humor, slapstick, sarcasm?
Slapstick.
I'll let one of you take it first.
Yeah. No,
Robin has a vote for slapstick. What do you
I
think, Daniel?
I think slapstick definitely has an immediacy to it, and there's still, and I know middle graders sort of, they're getting a bit older and they're getting a bit more sophisticated, but reading a book with action in it, and that slapstick is, works for me.
I think as they get older, the slapstick still really funny, but you have to use it more sparingly. So it's like a moment, and it, like when someone farts in that is always hilarious. And there's always little things you can do. But I think as they get older, I think sarcasm works well. I think a lot of it, and I hate this word, I hate it, banter, but that explains what I mean. It's a lot of it's to do with how the children interact, the things they say to each other, the way they take the mick out of each other, that sort of thing. I think a lot of the humor comes through really well that way, because that's how they talk to each other at school in real life. So that's where most of my humor goes in, and hopefully that that works. But I do still throw in the odd fart, even for the older kids. We all love a fart.
Yeah.
And a poo.
Yeah. Not at the same time.
I just feel like now we're just cracking ourselves up, like just having a good time. I think this one, actually, I'm going to throw this one at you, Daniel, first. What do you do when you get to a sticky plot point? What do you do? Just in general. What did you do?
I go to sleep usually for a little while. Certainly I don't just keep banging my head against it. I've just gone write a different bit. I try not to. When I get stuck, I don't necessarily stop work, but I just go and work on a different bit of it, and then come back. And not always, but quite often, it's the elves have come into the back of your head while you've not been there and kind of fixed the problem for you. And if it isn't fixed at that point, then it is perhaps symptomatic of a bigger problem that you've got, and you need to start digging to find out what that is. But the immediate answer to the question is just go away for a bit and ignore it.
Sounds perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
And then we also had a question. Can you describe your planning process, and does the humor come into it, or does that only come out when you're starting to write the first draft? Robin, can we start with you for this one?
Yeah, sure. No, the humor just happens. I never, I think planning humor is it's like planning a joke 10 minutes before when you're sitting with your friends in a restaurant or the pub. It's going to fall flat. So no, I never really plan the humor. But as said earlier, if they're in a funny situation, if the situation is humorous in itself, then and if the characters, Jen does it so well. If the characters have that aptitude to be funny, it'll just happen.
Any of you other lovely people as well?
Yeah, for me, I don't plan it. It comes out through the characters, I think. Yeah, just always think up, when you're planning your characters, think up a couple of really funny ones who say funny things. And then even if you're not funny yourself, your characters will be funny, and you just let them throw it in where it seems right. Yeah, I don't plan it. A lot of actually my favorite jokey bits are things that I haven't ever thought of. I've never seen them come in, and then they come out in the draft, and then when I read it back, and I probably even forgot that I wrote it in there, and I think, oh, that was fun. Oh, that was funny. Well done, Jennifer. So yeah, not planned, just as it comes.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Plan the story in a lot of detail, but in terms of what the jokes are, they just kind of appear when you start to bash the characters into each other.
Lovely. Actually, I'm going to balance this with another question, because we've gotten a lot of questions about the actual writing process. But there was actually somebody on Facebook that asked, hi, do you have any tips on getting a story considered by an agent? From the hundreds of submissions they receive each week, that would be great. Thank you. Hey, that's a very nice question. So when you've got your book ready and you're querying agents, do you have any tips?
I'd love to hear some tips.
Yeah, it's really tricky. I was so lucky with because I met my agent Kirsty through Imogen at Golden Egg. So I had submitted to a few agents prior to joining Golden Egg, and I'd got, most of them had said, oh, it's really good but not quite there kind of response. And then I met Imogen and started working with Golden Egg, and she just thought that Kirsty would be a good fit for me, so sent it to Kirsty, and Kirsty loved it. So I really got lucky with Golden Egg and Imogen. So my advice would be join Golden Egg and let Imogen tell you what to do. But yeah, I don't know where I'd start if I had to go back to submitting. It's such a horrible process. Like, it's so daunting. I think agents come across as probably the most intimidating people in the industry, really, because to me they always seem more intimidating than even publishers themselves. So just be like, in your submission, like, obviously research first, make sure you're sending it to an agent who's got a chance of liking the kind of thing that you're writing, and just be yourself, be friendly, be polite, listen to feedback if you get feedback. I think that's all you can do. It's such a horrible kind of thing to do, but most people go through it at some point, I think. I don't know if anyone else has got any better suggestions.
No, but I agree with you about, I mean, my first agent was totally fluky, though, Patrick Walsh, and I just wrote to him, and I just did it a completely standard way, and you know what you were saying about luck, it's true. I obviously got him on a good day, and it worked. But when I was years later, when I was advised and then I didn't have an agent for a while, and thought I'd be fine never having an agent ever again, and then was advised to get an agent, and I went through Golden Egg, and just as you said, this structured approach then to looking at agents that are going to like you, and then submitting to them in a way, you know, this is one tip: submit to them in the way that they ask on their website you to submit. You know, if they say they want this, that, and t'other, just, you know, do it, because that will get you that'll get you a fair hearing. But you know, all power to Golden Egg, because they then, you know, I had 3 agents knocking at my door just because they picked them really well and the pitch was really good.
I don't have any tips. I applied, I carpet bombed loads and loads of agents, although I did take the time to make sure I, you know, tailored every approach to each one, and got rejected, you know, a ton of times, and then found the right person in the end. But I could have used some tips myself.
Is it a numbers game, do you think?
Was for me.
I think there's definitely luck involved, and perseverance definitely makes a huge difference. But as Robin said, I mean, agents are so busy, they get so many submissions, you have to do it in the way that they've asked you to do it. Otherwise, they're just going to kind of throw it out before you've even got started. But I think there are, you know, like things like Golden Egg, sorry, I keep wobbling my computer, and SCBWI, they have agent parties. So going to events where you might have an opportunity to meet an agent face to face is always a bonus as well, as long as you don't kind of launch into a sales pitch about yourself. But just meeting them and being yourself, I think they just, like, you know, they're people, and they respond well to people who are friendly and polite. But yeah, it's just really tough, because you have to have also the right kind of story at the right kind of time that they think that they can sell, which one agent will think they definitely couldn't, and another one will be like, oh yeah, this is amazing. And you only need one yes as well, remember that, like that. You don't need to have 20 agents like arguing over you. You just need one person who believes in your story.
And if they're keen, I mean, Joe Malt is mine at Skylark, and it was an obvious fit, because you get on. You'll get on. You nearly always get on quite well with an agent if they like your work. You'll click. They're scary, but it's one of the nicest relationships in publishing, definitely.
Cool. All right, we'll do one more, I think. We had we've kind of done that. What do you do around checking if your jokes are original, or getting them as original as can be? I mean,
none of my jokes are original. Don't worry. I mean, that's not really a joke. I don't worry about that too much. I just try and kick over the tracks so you can't tell exactly where I got it from. But, you know, whether I'm aware of it or not, they all come from somewhere, don't they? And like as not, the answer to that is perhaps another book or another TV show or a conversation that you had with somebody.
Yeah.
So I don't worry about that. I mean, I don't literally transcribe them from The Simpsons with a pen and paper, but...
Do you not have your joke book? Oh, come on. That's
I actually haven't got a joke book, no. Sorry, I interrupted the question there.
No, that's fine. Any other ideas about, like, where do you get your inspiration? Is it because a lot of your humor for all three of you actually is quite situational, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just from putting those characters into those situations, and then if you know your characters well enough, then you'll know the kind of things that they would say. And like I said, if you make sure that some of your characters are like incredibly funny people, they just come out with stuff that you don't really plan and you don't really know it's going to come, and then it's fun. And that's not very helpful. But and obviously if the humor is based on the situation, then it's, even if it's been inspired by some other joke from something that you've seen that you can kind of vaguely remember, it's going to be a little bit different. So you're not plagiarizing. So yeah, I don't really check for originality. I just kind of go with what I go with and hope that it'll work, and hope that nobody will say, oh, you've copied this from The Simpsons or whatever else.
Yeah.
I do sometimes, if I've thought the joke, I do sometimes Google it after the fact just to check it isn't there. Like if it's a pun or something, you know, you put it in to make sure it's not already in common currency.
I do check puns as well. Yeah, I check puns just to make sure someone else hasn't used that pun in like a title or something before. Yeah. But only really with if I've done a hilarious play on words. So probably someone already has done before. Yeah, those are the only ones I would check as well, I think.
Okay. We actually, before we round off, we had a comment as well on Facebook saying that, and this is for Robin, Monster Max has been popular with our reading mini club, the junior chemo patients. One of the members is called Max. Thanks. So that's always a bonus. Yes. And he reads to some of the other members, which I think is really sweet.
No, it's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. And we've had multiple comments saying, thank you so much. It's so nice to hear you all speak. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. Thank you. A big thank you to Daniel, Robin, and Jennifer. And I think I'm going to get Amy to unmute and everybody and unleash the chaos. And everybody can put their things on, and we will just have like a couple of minutes of you two all wave and say congratulations. And thank you all so much for being here tonight.
It's like the smallest celebrity squares.
Oh, do we hear? Oh,
wow.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So many lovely faces. Yay. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Thanks, Nicole.
Oh, there's lots of them.
There are so many.
Yeah. So thank you all for being here. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.